buyers are smart right now and sellers are smart right now, that they're going to look at the market and say, where's our uncertainty? They're worried potentially about job loss, if they're worried about what's going to happen if there are these tariffs put in place, if there's going to be other drops in free trade. We're worried about putting food on our table. Are we really going to jump at the housing market right now when this is our priority?
Welcome to the Tom Storey Show with Steve Karrasch and Tom Storey, where we discuss everything real estate or whatever else is on our minds.
Welcome back to the show. This week's guest, Shawn, I feel like we've talked about having you on for a while, and I'm excited to actually get you here. Shawn Zigelstein has joined us. He's a real estate agent that's had success for many, many years. He's much older than he looks. He is Team Zold, does a lot of his business out of Richmond Hill and surrounding areas. He's one heck of a golfer and a super nice guy. Shawn Zigelstein, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tom. I'm not sure about one heck of a golfer, but I golf, so we'll just put it that way.
He's a golfer. So, Shawn, for our audience, can you give me a bit of a background on how long you've been doing this, the areas that you service?
Yeah, so got in the business I'm just about to start my 21st year.
Wow.
Always been with Royal LePage, always been with our brokerage. I'm in the Richmond Hill area. I work all of York region. Of course, we will step outside those boundaries a little bit here and there when we need to, when we've got clients that, want our help around other areas. But we will, use our referral partners as much as we can outside of those areas to make sure that they're looked after. But we really focus on the York region area. So Richmond Hill, Vaughan, Markham, up to Aurora, Newmarket, Bradford, Keswick, and such as well.
So 21 years means that you've been through a few real estate cycles. Going into your 21st year, how are you feeling about the market and your business right now versus what you've been through the last 20 years?
I think we're pretty positive. I think there's a sign of positivity in the market. I think that a lot of people, there's also a little bit of uncertainty within the market as well, that people are questioning what do we do and when do we do it. And we've noticed that in the last couple of years just with low sales numbers. But from the conversations we're having with people are getting ready. They're starting to get ready now. They're prepping their homes. They're wanting to know, okay, when do we hit the market? And just tell us what the steps are to get ready to do so. And then the buyers that are out there, I think, decreased interest rates coming down again, potentially at the end of this month, another potential drop in March should fuel some of those people to get into the market. First-time home buyers are really starting to gain some more interest and getting ready to do it and putting their money into the home buyers plan so they can get their tax benefits out of that as well. So I think there's all these good signs that are going to happen, and I think we just need the market to, come back a little bit more, and then I think it should take off, not to the craziness that we've seen in the past, but at least to get steady, right?
Are you finding the sellers that you're talking to in mid-January, do they want to get to the market by February, or does everyone still have that seasonality in their mind, whether it's right or wrong, that I want to list in March or April? What are you finding with your clients?
A little bit of everything. I think it really depends on their situation and their circumstances. If they've got kids that they have to finish school or want to finish school at a certain area and they're looking to move out of that area, well, they're going to wait until the spring because they've got to be in that house till June. If you have other people that really don't care, they're going to look to myself, look to our team, look to guys like you to say, okay, well, when do we list?
Right.
And you tell us when the best time is. And I remember couple years ago, and we had a couple condos sitting on the market for a while, and I pulled both of them off the market, and then January came and I suddenly saw this little bit of a jump, and I called my clients. I'm like, are you ready? And they're like, yep, okay, let's hit the market again. And we raised the price on both of them and sold them both.
With raising the price too.
With raising the price, and they're like, how does that work? I said, I don't know. I just felt that there was increased activity, more people looking, more product selling. So now is the time to hit the market. So seasonality is always one of those things that we notice in markets, and we see that happen all the time. Your spring market is always your busiest market with the most amount of inventory out there. But I think it also depends on motivation. And I think it's dependent on, there's a lot of people sitting on the market right now, right? Huge influx of new inventory coming out. but how motivated are they? Let's get the motivated people on the market. Those would sell.
Right. Yeah. And in my business, like the biggest challenge that we're having is that we're helping a lot of people sell their condos to then buy a house, like that move up buyer. And every single one is like, well, should we not wait till the condo market picks up a little bit? I'm like, well, then the house you're going to buy is going to pick up a little bit. It should, and the house section is going to be more out of reach because percentage wise, if they go up each 3%, that's, you know, a higher number on the house. Like these are the conversations I'm having with people now. It's like, do we just put it out now? Do we wait? Have you mentioned first time home buyers? Have you yet had a conversation with a first time home buyers that's like, hey, Shawn, because of the new 30-year AM and I have 15% down, like I am in the market this year. Like, are people taking advantage of that yet, or is it still too early?
I think it's still too early for that. I think they're planning, and I'm a big planner, right?
Yeah.
You know me well. I plan things out. I'm extremely organized. And, you know, what I try to do is right now have conversations with clients about their kids. So, for example, one of my clients came in yesterday just to stop by my office for a coffee, and we were talking, and the client said, yeah, so my daughter is waiting for a big promotion at work. She's 26 years old, and she should have enough money to, you know, put down on a property. Can she buy a 2-bedroom condo midtown
Right.
that she'll be able to rent her friend a room and make it happen with? And we did talk about the 30-year amortization, because I said that will help her
Right.
from a cash flow standpoint as well. So I don't think they're, you know, chomping at the bit to do it, but they will start to come out of the woodwork once they understand how it all works.
I had a condo listing at the end of last year, and normally we would take them off and relist. But in this situation, the seller said, just let it ride. I don't want to take it off and relist. Just let it ride. I'm like, okay. I got an offer on it this morning that was pretty good, and we just countered it back like just before recording this. And we didn't even change anything. So it's like,
Right.
I didn't even change the price, nothing. I didn't even relist it. So it was 0 days on market. So perhaps now this is a 2-bedroom. This isn't a micro junior 1-beds or smaller condo that are having issues right now. But this is still early days, but there was very few showings in December. And now we've started into the new year and we've already gotten offers. Steve, did you take off anything at the end of last year and bring it back? And if you have, are you immediately getting showings on it, or what's been happening for you?
Only one. Showings are sparse right now where we are.
Okay.
So Shawn, I'm out in BC, right? So showings are sparse and listings are coming on quickly. And it's funny that you mentioned, like, you know, the family that's doing the move up and the school time and all that, because that's very traditional. None of my listings right now, and we're getting lots, they are all no purchases on the other side. So they're all going in, folks going into a home, vacant properties where the person has already moved on, people leaving the province, unfortunately estate sales, right? And it's all of that. So those are all currently, I don't want to say they're all vacant, but there's a lot of vacancies, right? And so there's no other side. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get those folks to come to market now, because what we're seeing out west is a bloat of listings at a really high number of inventory for at least the last decade. Like, it's really, really high compared to the last decade. So they do need to take advantage of the early part of the year, because I think by April, there's going to be so much on the market that buyers are going to have a heyday.
Well, we ran some numbers, and it was really interesting. I was just curious about 6 months ago, wanted to see how many listings in GTA area of condos that were listed were actually either vacant units or tenanted properties.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference between York Region and Toronto was about a 3% difference. Toronto at one point was up to about 68% of all the properties that were listed in the condo market were either tenanted or vacant properties. And, you know, up here we were running 64, 65% at the same time. And it's just, you know, mind blowing to see that there was that much empty inventory or investor inventory. And those, you know, move up buyers, right? Like you were saying, they're not necessarily moving up, because we need that domino effect. We need that buyers that are sitting there and waiting to start buying, and then it's going to create that domino to buy the townhouses and the semis and the detached homes at the same time. Right?
So basically,
That's
the
what I've been waiting for.
condos need to start moving for the rest of the market to actually start moving, because there's so many people that would like to make that jump, that maybe actually financially can make that jump, but they can't sell their condo. If that's kind of step one to getting up to that next property, right?
Yeah, definitely agree with that.
So if 70,
they've got to have their equity, whatever that equity amount is.
Yeah, they got to get it out, because they're not buying the new.
Yes.
Not many people, some people, but not many people can just keep the condo as the investment and buy the next house. A lot of them need to take the proceeds from that condo to move up that property ladder. And 30%. So it's interesting. I run these numbers on my end too, and like, isn't that crazy to think that like only 30% of condos for sale is actually someone that lives in their condo selling their own property? That probably tells you everything you need to know.
It's pretty amazing. That's why it's slower. That's why we're seeing it, because nobody else wants to buy, and you get rid of the foreign buyers coming in. If they can't buy right now, then you're waiting for local investors to potentially buy, or end users. Well, like you said, the end users don't want the small little 400 square foot condos. They want something a little bit bigger, so that the 2 bedrooms might sell, but the small 400, 500 square foot units are going to be a tough sell at this point.
And with everything going on at the tenancy branch, as soon as your tenant decides to vacate because they're just moving on in life,
sell it.
Sell that thing, man, because if I want out and there's a tenant in it,
it's very
I'm
difficult.
not having any luck at that point in time. So like, I might not want to sell right now, but it might be my chance. So that could be skewing why that's all happening in that manner, right? Like people could just be taking advantage of, this is the easiest time to sell, even though the market sucks in condos, in Toronto. It might be the best time to sell just because the process of selling with a tenant inside, good Lord, I don't even know how you guys do it.
Well, that's the first question I ask, is like, is it tenanted? Are they month to month, or are they in the first year? If they're month to month, would you like to call them and offer them 2 months rent to sign the N11 to get a vacant possession date so we can actually sell this? Because Shawn, like, these numbers are old now. I'd have to redo these, but I had also done one just like, what's the likelihood of your condo actually selling if it's vacant, owner occupied, or tenanted? And I forget the exact math, but it was basically like percentage of them moving. You had a 50% higher chance of selling if it was owner occupied or vacant versus trying to sell a property with a tenant in it. Like, it was just such a wild difference in percentage of units actually finding a buyer, right?
Well, and I think traditionally too is an owner occupied unit is going to look a lot better than a vacant unit, even if you stage it up, or a tenanted unit, because a tenant doesn't care about the unit like the owner does. The owner is going to be willing to do all of the little things they need to do to make it show better. So it's definitely going to show better, and it's probably going to get more value at that point as well.
What do you think needs to happen for that investor to return? Because we've had a lot of, like, same as you were mentioning, like, I'm buying for my kid that's going to university, or, I want to get back into investment, but I want to buy a duplex or something. I want in the freehold side of things. That condo investor, because like rents are probably going to go down again this year, right? Like, what's it going to take for that buyer to come back?
Yeah, I think you've got to get back into some foreign ownership.
Probably.
I think, it's a government regulation at this point, because I don't see myself right now, and I have several rental properties. I'm not trying to sell them right now, which is a good thing. But would I be jumping into the condo market in Toronto right now, knowing that I can't cash flow even close to anything that's going to make sense? Probably not.
And what do we have
to? The typical buyer isn't going to do that.
And what do we have to do to get there, right? You have to not only rescind the foreign buyer ban, which I don't think there's any appetite for right now. And then Vancouver and Toronto both have, BC, and I don't know if it's Toronto or Ontario that has the foreign buyer tax. So it's like, at some point in time, though, if the market does get bad enough, I think they're going to have to revisit that.
We're going full circle. The people in which we blamed for the high cost of housing, we're now asking to return to get us
come back. We need to open up that sales center in Shanghai again.
But it is amazing if you look at the numbers, because they put these regulations in the last 2 years. We've had the lowest amount of sales in the GTA in the last 20 years.
Yeah, it's been crazy low.
That says something to you.
So you need that. You need that though, because it's gonna help the market. I actually think it's gonna help the market. Here's the problem: it's not helping construction. So you're helping the market come down now, which is hurting the people, not the government necessarily, except for, I guess, transfer taxes. But at the same time, like, it's going to amplify things down the road.
In the future. In
the future, yeah. Because if you do indeed continue to grow as a country, which I guess is questionable, but if you do grow, I mean, new builds, what are completions going to be in 5 years, 4 years? Almost zero? Like, our new builds starts almost zero?
The Edge Analytics numbers, I think they're Ben Rabideau's charts. Shawn, I'm sure you've seen something similar. Like by 2028, it was like less than 5,000 units that have already been sold. Like,
that are going to complete. And I think next year is something like 40,000, and then it just drops straight down.
Think,
correct?
Yeah, like in 25, I think it's the most we've ever had. So it's going to be such an extreme here. It's like, I think there's 40,000 being completed this year, and then it just so massively drops off every year because nothing's pre-sold. Now, if people do come back and pre-con projects actually launch and successfully sell out this year, because not many did last year, we could start filling up that 28 maybe. But do condo investors just like for you, I know you bought them, probably a while back, so it still probably looked really good. But if your tenant gave notice, would you be like, you know what, I'll just cash in now? Or would you say, you know what, I'd rather hang tight till 2028, 2029, take the risk that because they're not building anything, if I were to then sell it then, I'd probably make a lot more anyways? This episode of the Tom Storey Show is brought to you by Realty Ninja. Hey, real estate agents, I bet you didn't get into the real estate industry to try to become a web developer. Realty Ninja will help you build a beautiful website for your business without becoming all techie, because me and Steve are certainly not techie. They'll set up your entire site for you, they'll migrate the content from your current site, and they'll take care of all the back end, switching the domains, all the things that you don't want to do, they'll take care of for you. Their team of in-house designers will make your new site match your current brand and help you stand out from your competitors. Best of all, Realty Ninja offers a free unlimited trial that lets you build out your website, and they do not charge you until you're ready to launch. That's right, they're so confident in their product and that you're gonna love the website that you build with them. They will not charge you until it's ready to launch. They don't even take your credit card details. Listeners of the Tom Storey Show will not only get an unlimited trial before you launch, but if you go to realtyninja.com/Tom, you will get 20% off your first year after you launch. A beautiful, functional, and professional website is absolutely a must in today's real estate landscape, and Realty Ninja delivers. So go to realtyninja.com/Tom for 20% off your first year. That's realtyninja.com/Tom. And now back to the podcast.
I think for me, I believe that real estate's a long-term hold. I'm not one to flip properties constantly. I think that us, being in the careers that we're in and having these advantages of knowing the marketplace and such like that, we see wealth being built from ownership of real estate. And it's not necessarily flipping the real estate and putting it into something else that may not have the same sort of value. If you've bought something, and like you said, I'm way older than I look. When I bought
that was a compliment.
These properties,
kind of back.
No, I know. I'll take it anytime. It's the gray. I don't know. But when I go back to condos that I purchased 12, 13, 14 years ago, yes, are they up substantially? They are. Is there still an upside there? Yeah, I think they can still increase. However, will they pay themselves off? Will they cash flow for me in the future? Will they pay me a salary? Will that be an income down the road as a retirement plan? It could be. So
I think it will be if you just hold them. If you just hold them forever, you don't have to worry about ever selling it because the mortgage will be gone and you're being paid every month.
Well, that's exactly it. And I think that long-term growth is a great thing. Capital appreciation is fantastic. But if you can then have that money working for you elsewhere and leverage those a little bit and utilize, some of your equity in there, there's definitely a way to, build wealth at that point as well, rather than just selling and taking the cash out.
Steve, you had mentioned to us before we started recording that you had a conversation on your little vacation to Tucson.
Oh,
Steve
yeah.
wants Canada to become the 51st state. He keeps telling me privately off the podcast. So he was in Tucson. So what did that conversation look like?
Oh, it was fun. Well, Tucson, I mean, I've never been before. I just had an opportunity to go. And we flew into Phoenix, drove down to Tucson. By the way, the same population as Surrey, about 600,000 people. Way spread out. The problem in Tucson is it's 35 minutes to anything, right? So super, super spread out. Construction was interesting because everything is a one-story brick or concrete bungalow with a flat roof. Air conditioners on the roof, by the way, which I thought was interesting. Super cool. Not a stitch of grass in the whole bloody state. So it was interesting.
No, golf courses have the grass. It's okay.
Well, I couldn't tell if the golf course grass was turf or not because it's like a millimeter tall and bright green. So I couldn't really tell. But anyway, obviously, as you do when you're on vacation, the first thing you do is open up. Well, down there, it's not realtor.ca, it's Zillow. So you open up Zillow. The cool thing about Zillow, actually super creepy things about Zillow and cool things. One, they give you a immediate estimated value of the price under the listing, if it's listed or not, by the way, so you can type in any address. Another weird thing they do is, when you're looking on the map and there's like the gray outline of the building.
Okay.
They are superimposing the floor plan over that gray outline.
Oh, that's cool.
So you know exactly which room to creep into if you're a stalker, which is terrible. Kind of cool, though. And you can do that, I guess, when you have like a all one-level houses everywhere.
Right.
But I was sitting there talking to a local, and she was like, can you believe that I bought my house 20 years ago for $200,000? And today, she was so happy, it's worth like $400,000. This is a 2,000 square foot, 3-bed, 2-bath rancher with a pool in the backyard, right? Like she was just so happy. And I was like, that's crazy. Because when I go back 20 years and I see what my brother bought his single story for in Vancouver,
maybe worth like $1 million.
In Surrey, he bought it for $167,000 in 2002, maybe. And the dirt is worth 1.2 now. If it had a house on it, it'd be worth 1.3 to 1.4. And they actually tore that house down and built a new one, which I'm sure is worth 2.2 now. Right. So it was just amazing to see, and she was so happy because the value of her property went up. It doubled in 20 years. She was so stoked. And I'm searching around going, even with the exchange, I can sell my house right now, buy one of the fanciest houses in Tucson, be mortgage free. And they are allowing that. It's funny how different things are, but how much they are the same. They're now allowing what they call casitas or secondary homes on the property. So a lot of them have this. Now get this. So the place we stayed in was worth about $400,000 according to the Zestimate, which is always right. Correct,
always right. Yep.
The people bought that place in 2019 for $200,000. Apparently it's worth $400,000 now. They renovated it. Maybe they could put a second casino on there or something like that. But they Airbnb it for $3,000 a week. And let me tell you, Airbnb down there was absolutely fantastic. But these people own 8 properties across the state, and they Airbnb them all. That is their full-time job.
But mortgage rates in the States right now are 7%. So it depends on when they bought these Airbnbs. If they bought it at 2% for 30 year or whatever, then they're great.
$12,000 a month, Tom Storey, for a $200,000 purchase.
So what are you waiting for?
Not too bad.
Why aren't you buying a bunch of Tucson properties and Airbnb in them?
I mean, I probably should. I'm waiting for we got to be inaugurated as the 51st state first, I guess, and then we got to get down there. But it's just crazy because what I saw was, even though values were so low and they don't increase, I just saw so much opportunity. And maybe that's like whatever they call it, rose-covered glasses or whatever the heck you're looking through. Rose lens? I don't even know what the saying is. But maybe it's just because I was new there and I was looking at this, but it was just like, man.
Well, it's comparing it to what we know, which we can't even do Airbnb. It's basically banned, but for the most part.
Brendan was saying about that when he was on, about like, we're not allowed to do things with our properties now, right? Like even if we buy our properties and pay them down, we're still restricted with their use. We can't even leave them vacant anymore if we want to.
But we can.
Right?
We just have to pay a tax,
which means you're not allowed, right? So it's just, I just was so
penalize you for it.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to be penalized for being a good little saver and being a good little business person. You can't have an Airbnb and all that stuff. Now I understand they also have different issues there than we have, and I mean, I didn't see many of them as being a tourist. It was pretty darn nice down there. But I was just absolutely blown away at how someone in that situation can be so stoked. They were like, yeah, man, look at this. It doubled.
They don't know what prices have done in Canada. They don't know your perspective. And by the way, not even Canada, like Edmonton hasn't done that. Really, our two markets, our greater markets have done crazy growth, not the rest of Canada.
So I was down there with John from Seattle. And what I was amazed at in talking to John is how exactly the same Seattle and the greater Vancouver market are right now. Identical.
But just much cheaper in Seattle, I would guess.
No, not much cheaper.
Really?
Now, here's what's happened in Seattle, and maybe we should have them back on to talk about it one time. But in the States, they've gone away from condo building, and they've gone towards way more single detached.
Well, that will raise the average price.
But what they've done, it's actually not necessarily. It's actually made them affordable because they're plentiful. What they've done is they've stopped building because every time a condo building gets built, the strata or the homeowners association, whatever you want to call it down there, lawsuits start happening because they really like to sue people in the States. And as a result, nobody wants to own a condo because they know if they're getting in there, they may not be able to finance it because of a lawsuit. They might get involved in a lawsuit themselves. So they've gone, condos, get out of here. Let's spread this stuff out as far as we possibly can. So, yes.
I don't know if you've heard what's going on down in Florida right now. Remember there was that collapse a couple years ago of a condo building collapsed and such like that. Now what they're basically making them all do is 10-year inspections. And there's a lot of these old properties along the beach, all up and down from Miami, all the way up. And what they're doing is they're getting these special assessments because a lot of them never had reserve funds. And they're getting assessments on units that are 40, 50 years old of $70,000, $80,000.
Yeah.
So people are just going to start selling them because they can't afford an assessment. You've got somebody who's owned it for the last 40 years. They're in their 80s. The last thing they want to do is throw this kind of money at something to repair a balcony that they don't even go out on.
Yeah. Not uncommon.
That's going to be a really interesting market to watch there. But talk about suing. You know, people are just throwing money at everything to try to get back to say, why are we now in charge of having to cover costs here because they haven't paid maintenance fees or reserve fund fees for the last 40 years.
We have a fix for you in BC. We have mandatory reports done on deficiencies. We have mandatory minimum amounts to put in. There's all this craziness. None of it's actually helping, but we've got a regulation for it. So,
yeah.
Shawn, at some point in 2025, there's going to be an election in Canada. I'm not going to ask you who you're going to vote for or your political views. What I want to know is we just saw in the States that in election years, buyers and sellers have hesitancy to make the real estate decisions leading up to an election. So if we time this out here and go like, okay, it's plausible to think that the election in Canada, based on when they actually go back to government here, the non-confidence, what ends up happening, could be in April, May this year. That's supposed to be our like really crazy spring market. Does a Canadian election at that time of the year make buyers or sellers go, you know what? I just want to hang tight till I see what the outcome is, and then I'll make my decision.
I think it may prep them to sit back right now and say, okay, well, what's going to happen with the U.S.? We've watched the U.S. election. We know what's happened there. We might become the 51st state, according to Twitter yesterday, and pictures of Canada with a U.S. flag on it. Is the uncertainty still there? It is, and I think you're going to get the people that are want to sell or buy because of necessity. People are moving into different areas. People are coming for jobs, whatever it may be. I don't know if a regulation standpoint, people are going to wait to see what a new government that's going to be in place. And I think everybody is assuming we're going to have a brand new government.
Right.
What that new government is going to look like when it comes to foreign ownership or any rules, or are we going to get more breaks on new homes? Are there going to be other discounts available? I don't think they're going to sit and wait, but I think buyers are smart right now and sellers are smart right now that they're going to look at the market and say, where's our uncertainty? We're worried about putting food on our table. Are we really going to jump at the housing market right now when this is our priority? Are we going to have to worry about tariffs coming into play? Yeah, so I think they are. I think they're going to hesitate. I think they may be as hesitant as they were in 2024 looking at the U.S. election. While the U.S. election doesn't have an exact effect on our marketplace, it's the perception of it all. Yeah. And I think that was the biggest uncertainty for everybody is, okay, what is going to happen if? And I think they're worried potentially about job loss. They're worried about what's going to happen if there are these tariffs put in place, if there's going to be other drops in free trade. Who knows what the government is going to plan once we get a government back in place while the U.S. is kicking into gear, come next week. So it's going to be a really interesting spring. And will that hold back the spring market? I don't think it's going to hold back the spring market because I think if buyers want to buy, they're going to buy. If they want to sell, they're going to sell and move up, or they're going to sell, Steve, like you said, because they've got an estate sale, unfortunately, and they have to sell the house or whatever might be happening in people's lives. And we do have an elderly population, and I think that is a lot of the sales that we're going to see usually early in the year is people want to get out of their houses and into either long-term care homes, retirement homes, other other homes other than a large typical detached two-story family home. So I think we will start to see that a little bit as well.
Think about the last few years we've had. So 2019, we had that election in Canada where Trudeau won again. To his credit, called that a smart time and won. Then we had 2020. I don't need to rehash that. 2021 was absolutely bonkers in the real estate market. 2022, we had rates go up the fastest maybe they've ever gone up in history. 2023, I guess you could argue, was a bit of a boring year. There wasn't a lot that happened, just 2 rate hikes. And then last year we had rates come down fast. And now this year we're going to have an election. It's just been like every year there's something happening that's going to give Canadians like some level of uncertainty on the decisions that they're making financially or real estate decisions. So hopefully after 25, we can have some calmness.
Well, we're going to hope for stability, but at the same time, I think everyone always worries about themselves. I think everybody at the end of the day has to worry about themselves, has to worry about their family, has to worry about what their goal is and what they're going to be able to do to move forward. So whether it's, I've got to put my kids through university, or I've got a plan for my parents who are elderly going into somewhere, and what does that plan look like? And I think everybody is going to have these plans, and with the aging population as well, and the uncertainty within politics and just, job crisis and such like that, I think it's going to be really interesting to watch what's going to happen and what people's mentality looks like on it. Is it going to be positive? Is it going to be negative? Or is it going to be another, like you said, Tom, boring year this year? It could be a boring year with a little bit slight increases. Are we going to see the, 2, 3, 4% increase?
That'd be great.
It's a boring year, and, there's no real surprises at that point as well.
Let me give you a scenario now. Maybe you guys can both answer it because I'm getting this call more and more often. And a lot of it is just, I'm getting this call because people are ready to move on, right? They've lived in a property that they bought at peak for 2 or 3 years now. And people don't realize that the average time for someone to move is like 4 years for them to stay put in one place, right? So just through life happening, there are going to be people that need to make this choice. So let's say, for instance, I bought a property for $1 million at the peak, and it's now worth $850. I'm moving on. No matter what, I'm moving on. Like I've got a better job opportunity somewhere. Something's happening. I'm moving on. What do you pick? Do you pick market value? So fees in, let's say you're coming out with 20 grand after you're 20% down, right? Or, so if you sell, or do you rent it out and do you continue to lose $1,000 to $1,500 a month because the rent doesn't cover? This is a realistic scenario. And what I'm finding is that people are in paralysis. Yeah. Maybe they put it on the market, but they put it on the market for $1 million and we know that that's never going to happen. So then they're losing money, maybe having it be vacant or something like that. So maybe Shawn, I'll put that to you. Like, which one of those scenarios do you pick right now?
Hey, podcast listener, if you're looking to buy or sell a property in Surrey or the Fraser Valley, you have to reach out to Steve Karrasch, my co-host. As much as we make fun of each other on this show, the truth is that I do this podcast with him because he is reliable. He has an opinion. He knows what he's doing. He has a ton of experience. And although I have never personally sold a home with Steve, if I were and I was in that area, he would be my number one choice. And let's be honest with each other. As much as he has a hard exterior on the show, he's a little bit of a softie once you get digging a little bit deeper. So you can reach out to Steve in the link in the description. I hope you enjoy the rest of the podcast.
I think it depends on where they think that they're going to be able to put their money into that's either going to help them or hurt them some more, right? Some people don't have the ability, unfortunately, to hold on to a property and forget about losing the $1,500 a month. It's everything else that they may need that money to do. So I think it's really a personal question based on, their circumstances, what they are, in need of doing, and their financial situation, right? Some people just can't do it, and others, no problem. They're going to be the ones that will invest in anything right now at any time. But others, I don't see that happening as much.
I would ask Steve if they took the option of keeping the property and renting it out for a loss on a cash flow basis. How long are you comfortable doing that for? Like, okay, I'll do this for I can manage to do this for 2 years, but then I will have to absolutely sell it then, versus if they bought peak 22, it's anybody's best guess how long it will take to get back to that number. That could take it could take a long time, long
5,
time.
6, 10 years.
Right.
So what do you do?
Property is now losing, like you said, if they bought it at $1 million to be selling now at $850, we're seeing that across the board. I ran comparables for a lady the other day. She's 82, husband's 81, want to move into a bungalow. We were looking at sales in the area over the last 6 months, and a number of them had been bought in 2021 and 2022 at ridiculous peaks, and they're all losing money at this point.
But they are selling. They
are selling.
Are they listed at prices that you would deem as today's price, or are they they're like, well, I know I'm taking a loss, so just put it up at this number and see what happens?
Well, they have been on the market for 6 months because they will try to they will try to make their money back, but of course at the end of the day it's not happening.
I feel like this is a bit of a coach call right now, but this is legitimately the calls I'm having right now. And so it's I'm trying to get these guys to just make a decision. You could sell with me. Great. This is what it's going to cost you. Sure, I'll make money, but I'm not pressuring you towards that. And at the same time, my thought is hold real estate for as long as possible, but I'm not here to I'm not in a position where I'm losing $1,500 a month.
But if you're losing that much money right away, you're realizing that loss. If you hold the property and you're only realizing a small loss every month, and again, talk to your accountant, but perhaps the interest on that mortgage on your investment can be, talk to an accountant about that kind of stuff. But it's less of a risk to hold on and hope things get better and only lose 12 grand a year on cash flow versus realizing that 150 plus loss today, if you can afford to keep it.
The good news is that like it's going to principal, so it won't be a realized loss as long as property values come back. But I guess my point is when I speak to these people, thank goodness it's not the majority, but they are coming more and more now. When I do speak to them, not making a choice is actually what their choice is. So they're holding the property and continuing to not just set foot on like, okay, I'm going to rent it out, or I'm going to sell it and I'm going to cut my losses, or I'm going to continue to hold this because I do believe in the asset long term. And I just think they're absolutely paralyzed. Anyway, that's a challenge I'm having just right now for all my clients, or not all my clients, but the clients that are reaching out about that.
No, and I think Tom was right there. Like, you have to say to the client, okay, how long are you able to hold on to this? Because what happens if, let's just look at this scenario, what happens in a year? Mm-hmm. And in a year, if the market is exactly the same and you still are at the same value and you're still losing money, you're now down $12,000 to $15,000. You've actually lost more in probably the funds that you could utilize elsewhere.
And your property's tenanted.
Your property's tenanted, and you're stressed beyond all belief.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Because of this, because you're throwing $1,500 or $1,000 a month into something. Are you going to be able to handle that even from a stress standpoint?
Is the headache worth $1,000 a month, or is the headache worth rip off the Band-Aid for $175K? Right?
Are you going to sleep at night either way? Yeah. With the decision that how often are you going to think about whichever decision you make over the next few years? Yeah. Right.
I actually think the right move, if that was me in that situation, was to like, if the headache was the problem, ripping off that Band-Aid now and getting over it in 3 to 6 months is the better option. Right.
But I do think it is easy for us to say that, right? We're an outside voice in their head. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think that no matter what we think at the end of the day, they're having these internal thoughts of, okay, but I'm still losing $150,000.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how do I do that? And how do I get through this? And it may be the logical step to rip the Band-Aid off and say, guys, it's not going to get better. 12 months from now, you're going to be in exactly the same place as you are right now. How's your stress level going to be? How's everything else going to be? But these people, for a lot of them, that may be part of that's a huge nut in their life savings that they've got as well.
I just feel like it's one of those.
I think it's tough to say, right?
It's one of those things where you can learn from it. You can rip off the Band-Aid, and then 10 or 15 years down the road, you're like, oh, remember when I got destroyed back then? It's like the Daryl Frankfurt, right? Like, remember when I got destroyed way back then? Like, that's, if anything, you can chalk it up to a learning experience, and a very expensive one, to not speculate into the market.
Or in 10 and 15 years, you're like, I'm really damn happy I kept that property because now it's worth double what it was worth then. Yeah. Even though I bought it at the peak, I kept it. I made it work, and I'm very happy, right? So you can look at both sides. That's the real
answer. So are you prepared? So this is the question I asked them. Are you prepared to hold this for 20 years? Because my actual answer is what I've been saying so far. One, I ask how old they are. And let's say I'm 35, 45 years old. Awesome. This is your retirement. So you sell this thing, but you sell it at 65. That's the right answer, because all that money is going to come back almost guaranteed. YouTube comments, read that part, or comment on that part for sure. But like, almost guaranteed that money is going to double by the time you're 65, even in Tucson, right? So the chances are that's the right answer. But can they hold on for 20 years, man? Being a landlord for 4 years is a pain in the butt.
Well, I guess we'll know in 20 years. We'll come back to this conversation in 20 years, and we'll see what people did. Shawn, there's 9 things, and we already talked about the election, but 9 things that I think are factors, like when we're having an outlook on the real estate market, like these are things that I would be watching, and I want to get your opinion on them. And the 10th one, which I didn't even put in there, but probably should have, is just kind of put it out there as the obvious, is like, what's the unemployment rate throughout the year? Because that's going to impact all of these things. So the first thing is interest rates, fixed, variable. Okay, that's fairly standard. We already talked about the election. The third one was housing starts. We've talked so much, like you do just as much, if not way more media than I do, Shawn. I'm sure you get asked this question all the time. Like the housing starts that are coming look like they're purpose-built rentals, some condo stuff, but we're not really building any actual homes. Any thoughts on housing starts in 2025?
I think everybody's sitting back. I think builders right now are sitting there and they're saying, okay, why are we jumping to market? If we bought this land already and we know that we're just holding it and it's a long-term play, why are we going to jump into it? The government says, yes, we need more housing. Royal LePage, we've stated for years now that we need more affordable housing. It's not happening anytime soon. Builders not jumping at it to say, oh, here, let's just line up and build these products. Sales centers have closed down. They're not opening them. They have, they'll open one phase and then say, oh, let's hold back for now because they don't want to sit there with open sales centers and not selling properties. So I think that they need this little bit of a push to come back. And whether that is certainty in the marketplace, then we'll start to see some more selling. But at the time, right now, where you're hearing all these stories of builders, closing their doors and going bankrupt and deposits, being held and such like that, I don't see them rushing to market in 2025.
Yeah, we know we need more housing, and we've made it as difficult as possible on builders to actually build and make a profit, which means they don't build any housing. And, okay. Yeah. Next one was rental prices. I've stated that I think rental prices will continue to drop this year, just because from the peaks of where they were in like 21, 22. What's your general thought on just the rental costs for a lot of first-time home buyers that are renting? Are saying like, oh, I'm going to continue to rent because it's still so much cheaper on a monthly basis than that mortgage payment. Do you think some of them are going to go, okay, the new 30-year rental prices might be dropping, but it's time to finally bite the bullet and jump in?
I think it really depends on how much they can save and how much they can cash flow. I think that's always at the end of the day, when you sit there and you look at people's numbers and you sit down with a first-time home buyer and they don't understand all of the costs that are involved, it's very easy to say to them, you could spend X amount and own, or you could spend the money that you're spending in rent right now. I know somebody right now who I think they're spending, it's short of $1,800 a month for a 1-bedroom condo.
That's actually cheap.
It's very cheap. Yeah. And they're like, why would I possibly look at buying something right now? Even if I put 20% down, I'm going to be spending so much more money.
Like 35 probably basis. At least.
Bingo. That's what I said. It's double. Yeah. So you're spending double to own. And yes, your money is going towards principal and you're going to be paying that off. But if you can take that extra money right now and $1,800 and throw that into a bank account every month or a savings vehicle, and that's making you money, does that make sense? Of course it does. Now, for the person that was spending $2,800 a month and it's come down a little bit, and I do think rents are going to come down, a little bit. I don't think it's going to be a massive drop, but I think they're going to come down and stabilize a little bit. Would those be the people that might consider going into something in ownership? Potentially.
But even the $1,800 a month person, like same thing, like if they're 65, I'd probably say, okay, maybe just keep renting because that's a really low rent. But if they're 25 or 30, it's like, I know you're doubling your cost and I know it's so much cheaper right now. And I can't promise you the market's going to double again in the next 10 years, but if you can afford to do it, even like just buy the place and stay in your rental and keep your first place as an investment. Yeah. Like do something. Like I truly feel this, not as a salesperson, but like in my core, like it's a trap by paying such low rent. Like
it's a trap. Insert the Star Wars.
And I think the key is that they've got to be the person that does invest that money.
Yes.
If that person is not investing that money at all, then 100% you say, buy something, and this is what you're going to do, because it's a forced savings plan at that point.
Right. That's actually, you're describing a lot of our investors, believe it or not. We've had, over the last year and a half, we've had a good amount of investors who are young kids still at home that have like a massive amount of money saved. One guy was as young as 24, working with an investor kind of in the same age group right now, or an older guy that was probably about my age, maybe 40, 45. And he's like, listen, I've got an arrangement. I'm single. I rent a room. It's a great situation. I'm like helping out a family friend, basically renting a room for $500 a month. He's like, I'm buying an investment property and I don't mind cash flowing negative $500 a month.
Right.
Because I've got the cheapest cost of living in Vancouver. And he also, by the way, is living in like the other side of the river. So he's in town as opposed to Surrey. So he bought an investment property in Surrey to rent out. He's like, maybe one day I'll change and I'll move into it. Maybe. But at this point in time, I'm going to cash flow negative. And why not? That's my RSP money. And I'm basically living for free already.
Can I just add two things to that? Just, I know there's people I always try to like give context to people listening that aren't as involved in this. If you're a renter that has cheap rent and you're thinking about buying your first property as an investment, because it's an investment, you do have to put 20% down. So new mortgage rules, whatever. And you don't get your first time home buyer credit. So just to add to that, just so that's not a surprise to people down the road.
It's not,
at least
it's
in
not
Ontario.
It's not a great strategy. I don't think it's a great strategy, but it is what people are doing.
But is it not better than not doing it if you have the means to do it? Unless you're a whiz in the stock market and you know that way better, by all means, go for it. But for the average Canadian, I think it's hard to argue that.
I think real estate builds growth, and we know that it builds wealth.
Yeah,
and it's proven over the years that if you own real estate, you will eventually get wealthy from that real estate, unless you use it as your own personal ATM and keep refinancing it and leveraging yourself to, buy, cars and stuff like that. So, I think that dependent on the situation, I think everybody is so different in what their tolerance is for the rental market, of what they want to do, what their investments are doing elsewhere, and what their tax strategy should be as well. Right? How long are you going to hold that place for? Because if you hold it and then sell it, you will have to pay capital gains on it.
Yeah.
It will happen as well.
There's a few other ones I had here. I'll read them off quickly, but there's just one I want to really ask you on. I had sales volume, tariffs, the new mortgage rules we've talked about, just overall new construction. And I feel like I'm having deja vu in this moment, Steve, because I've asked so many people this question. I thought I would have to stop asking this question, but it keeps showing up in my comments. Mortgage renewals, Shawn. There's 1 million plus mortgages coming up that are signed at probably between 2% and 3% that are now going to be in the mid 4s. Is it finally the year that this actually makes a difference? Because I have yet to have an actual seller call me and say, my mortgage is coming up and I have to sell. The conversations I'm having are, I don't like this. What are my options? But it's not a desperation thing. What are you finding?
If you are a real estate agent in Ontario, you know all about TRESA and Rico's information guide, but your clients don't. So we are excited to introduce you to TRESAvideo.ca. It's a dynamic tool designed to help you simplify the complexities of TRESA while explaining Rico's information guide to your clients. TRESA Video is more than just a visual aid. It's a strategic investment in your brand's integrity and your client's education. Tom and his team use their own custom branded video that they purchased from TRESAvideo.ca in communications with their clients. Simply embed a link in your email signature, upload your video to YouTube, place it on your website, share it via text, or integrate your custom branded video into email campaigns using any CRM. Check out TRESAvideo.ca or click the link below. Quickly upload your branding and instantly elevate your trust and transparency with your clients. That's TRESAvideo.ca. TRESA video.ca.
Well, I think 2025 and 2026 have the largest amount. I think it was 60 60% of all mortgages are coming due in 2026 as of right now that people locked in on. So I think that's why, the bank not making stress tests mandatory anymore on renewals, even if you switch banks, I think is huge. I think that's really going to help the marketplace. I think a lot of people have to balance their books again and look at their budgets and say, okay, how much is it going to cost me? Because it is going to cost them more money. It's just a matter of how much more and what can they do to make that happen. Do I think that we're going to suddenly see a mass amount of listings because people aren't going to be able to afford their mortgage and such like that? I don't think so, not with the rates dropping the way they did. I think that if we were still up 1.5 points higher, totally different world. And I think people then would be scrambling going, okay, now we're really messed up. But I think with the market that it's come back down considerably, and assuming we're going to see another couple of drops early, 2025, if we see those drops, you're going to have a little bit of pain, but I think people will be able to make it manageable.
I think, Tom, it's the incomes, and let me put the part you got to listen to here. The incomes of homeowners have gone up so substantially
in the last 5 years.
I don't think it's going to be in the last 2 years. I don't think it's going to be a big deal, the renewals. The incomes of renters, or maybe just lower income people, or maybe of younger people, they're getting smashed. So I think the actual income of homeowners is much larger. And now we're below the stress test rate of which they were tested on previously. Nothing burger. We're fine.
Yeah. And the banks will push back the amortization if you ask them to. And we can go into that forever. All right, Shawn.
I think the last thing the banks want is to have.
Yeah, they don't want to deal with it.
They don't want to have to deal with that at all.
All right. Most importantly, we've talked about real estate for almost an hour, but you play, a few rounds of golf a year too, and I want to get to golf. Just a few rounds of golf.
Just a few.
Best 5 golf courses you've played.
My goodness. I don't know if I'll rank like the all of them. So if I start at number 5, so in my top 5, we're just going to say in my top 5, Summit is the course that I play in Richmond Hill. I'm there all the time. If I didn't say Summit is in my top 5, I'd be crazy.
Yep.
I really loved, there's a course in Florida called Stream Song, and there was a Royal LePage President's Cup trip that we went on. We went on a few really good President's Cup trips with Royal LePage. Stream Song in Florida was fantastic. Whistling Straits, what a great course that is. That's in Wisconsin. Fantastic. Pebble Beach is
you played Pebble.
Played Pebble. I was a very bad golfer at that point, and I cracked 100, so I was really happy about that. I would like to go back again, and I will go back again now that I've become a much better golfer. Not a great golfer, but I'm a decent golfer. We'll take it. Number 1 actually happened about a year and a half ago. We were in Scotland, and we were there on a Royal LePage trip. And Tom, you probably remember all about this. And a group of us went up to St. Andrews, and I was lucky enough to win a ballot to get onto the old course at St. Andrews. And there was 4 of us, all Royal LePagers, that went out and we played, and we had caddies. It was the best golf experience that I've ever had. Just the course, it was freezing cold. It was April 1st.
Yeah.
It was freezing cold. My caddy is walking around in shorts, and he's been there for probably 50 years caddying. His name was Jimmy. But what an experience just to play like the home of golf. That was number 1 by far.
I know very little about golf, but is Cabot in the top 10?
Cabot is number 1 in Canada.
Right. But I mean, for your list though, for your list.
Oh yeah, no, Cabot is definitely there. Like Cabot, Whistling Straits, Stream Song. I think Cabot is probably, I would say, number 3.
Okay.
So I would say it probably goes, my course is in there as well. But if you just talk about that one course, I think Cabot, the Cliffs course, was absolutely spectacular.
Yeah.
But I think that Whistling Straits is up there. Stream Song, I loved just the complex. I loved the where you stay. I loved everything about it. But, I've also played at Pinehurst. Well, Pinehurst #2. It's a classic course. Like, there's so many that are unreal. There's a couple of places down on islands in the Caribbean that are spectacular courses.
I felt
But
guilty.
I think from an event, from everything like that, you've played Cabot St. Lucia. Like,
yeah, and I play golf twice a year, and one of them was
I want to get down to Cabot St. Lucia, so that's going to be on my list. But to rank the top 5, again, I think Summit, my course, is got to be right up there because I play it all the time. I love it, and Cabot in Nova Scotia, Whistling Straits, Pebble Beach, and then St. Andrews. That'd probably be my top 5.
Well, Shawn, no Top Golf Tucson. That was one of the last one I played. It was fantastic.
It's funny. Every year, my buddies and I usually go down to Arizona on a golf trip, and I love Arizona. I love the heat. So, Steve, we've just met here and stuff like that. Tom knows me well. I love the heat. So you put me anywhere hot. I go to Palm Springs in August. It's 120. Yeah. I'm thrilled. But we go down to Arizona every year in golf. This year, we're going to Myrtle Beach instead of Arizona. So I'm like, guys, it better be warm or I'm not going to be happy. So
51st state, here we come.
Exactly. So, we'll see what happens. But yeah, I do a lot of traveling for golf and tend to spend my time that way as well.
Awesome. Well, Shawn, I appreciate you taking the time chatting with us. For our audience, if you do have a property you're looking to buy, sell in Shawn's neck of the woods, definitely give him a call directly. We'll put his contact info below. And I'll see you in Argentina this year. I'll probably see you before that as well. And appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, everybody, for watching, listening, and we will see you next week. Bye.